And here we are, everybody. The good man, Ollie Hayes himself, is here. How are you, Ollie?
I'm very well, thank you, Jared. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for coming on the show. We're here to talk about your brand new EP, Christmassy, that has come out over the Christmas period and is full of Christmas festivity type songs and Christmas things. But before we talk about that, I wanted to ask you about your recent headline show at Rough Trade. And I want you to tell me what it was like to be able to perform your first headlining show since the pandemic, not really over, but we're now allowed to leave our houses. So,
well, it was just amazing, honestly. So it's been a long time since I've kind of performed because obviously said pandemic has stopped a lot of that. And also, really, I was only came out as like a solo artist in 2020 anyway. So I've never really had a chance to perform music. And yeah, it was just wonderful because I spent a long time. It was just me. It was just me on the stage, and like I'd synced the whole show, so everything was to click. But it meant that the whole show, like once you started, you didn't stop.
yeah.
So it was like a lot of stress learning that side of it. But I played loads of songs, obviously, and I played a lot of songs off my album, which was like almost a year old at that point. And it was amazing seeing like the reaction to songs that I didn't expect, if that makes sense. Like there was a song called Liars that I played in, everyone absolutely loved. I was like, oh, that
It's a great song. It's a good song.
Thank you very much. But I just didn't think that that would be the one that everyone was like, oh, wow, this is really great. So that was really cool. It was just a really good night, and I was more happy that people actually wanted to come and see me play. That was the main goal that was achieved.
Yeah. Well, I think you find with a lot of artists that it's often, sure, everybody wants to go to a concert to hear the singles, but a lot of people love going to a gig and being able, if an artist digs out a deep cut, the audience goes absolutely nuts because you weren't expecting it, right?
Oh, not at all, not at all. And there was some very old songs in there, and that was really lovely to see like the reaction for so I played a song that was with my band The Half Eight that was never released, and people have heard it for years. And then I also played another song from The Half Eight called Kiss Me Like You Mean It that you might have heard. I don't know if people have heard, but I played that like in an acoustic form, and that was really amazing. A song that was again never released, that people knew kind of word for word, was really kind of special.
You got a very dedicated old fan base there, my friend. Very dedicated.
I know, I do. And to be fair though, that was the same with my own stuff. Like so off my first little EP called Mad Love, the song Mad Love, people were singing along to that word for word. It was really great because I when I put the show on, I was kind of like, this is kind of something for me. I want to do it, and hopefully people will come. And then when people actually came and kind of knew the songs and were singing along, and kind of, it was just, really wonderful evening, really wonderful evening.
I'm very sad I missed out, but oceans and continents stand in the way. All right.
If I ever do one in New Zealand, you're on the guest list, mate.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll MC it for you. I'll film it. I'll do all the necessary things that need to be done. We'll turn it into a DVD. All right. So let's talk about the EP. And the first question I have for you is, why in hell, of all the things to write an EP about, Christmas?
Okay. Great question. Thank you. This is the first time I think I've been asked this. So 2020 Christmas, I was like, I want to write a song about Christmas while I feel Christmassy, so to speak. And I put it off.
Good plug.
Till January. Thank you. I'm media trained. I'm not. I put the song off writing it till the January. And then I found it really difficult to kind of do it. And that was more an exercise. The whole EP was an exercise. But so this first song isn't on the EP and never actually got finished. And then 2021 Christmas, actually the day after my EP was released, I wrote a song that felt Christmassy in the Christmas period while I was feeling that way. So I was like, great, I've done that, I've achieved that. And then I went away in January and did like a writing camp for an album with another artist that I wrote for, which is called Chasing Deer, who was also a support at my show. And I came back for that, and we worked really, really hard. And I felt a little bit burnt out creatively. And so it was like a week, and then it was 2 weeks, and I hadn't written anything. And so I just was like, come on, you've got to jump back into it. And I just sat down with the car. First thing that came out was Doesn't Feel Like Christmas. So kind of finished it, and it was more like, okay, now breathe. Now you can kind of go back into it. And then it came to like April time, and I was going through my little hard drive of songs that I had or were like partially done or were done and never released and stuff. And I found a song called In the Snow, which was like years and years old. And it was released actually a long time ago. And it was just really poor. Like the recording was very poor, and it wasn't great, but I thought the song was good. So then I was, okay, finish it. Just finish it and do it how you would do it and make it as good as possible. So then I looked at it, I was like, well, I've got three. That's nearly an EP. So I may as well do one more. And I have like a little note of songs, challenge songs to try and write in different styles and produce in different things. So I had like Disney song. I was like, why don't I do a Disney song at Christmas? As in not like a Disney song, as
Yeah.
in the way it sounds like the big orchestra. So I did Hole in My Heart next, and that came along very quickly. And then Boxing Day Blues was just, which is like a rock and roll song, was just a throwaway. It was just a bit of fun. Originally, that was just literally for me to have some fun with, and just kind of like play rock and roll music, because I don't normally do that in my own stuff. So then I had these 5 songs, and then was like, okay, well, looks like I've got a Christmas EP. Um, and the other thing with it was, by doing a Christmas EP, there's like an end point. There
Mm.
is it. Obviously, next year it'll come back and be relevant, but it's like, as of January 1st, none of these songs can be promoted.
Yeah.
So it was like giving myself, well, this is a window, and it's also learning like what worked in the campaign from my point of view for like the next album, what I can do from this like little experiment thing onwards. So it was a learning thing, the whole thing was, but it's had a good reaction, so I'm happy with that.
Yes, no. I took a listen to it, and I have to say that I'm not a fan of cheesy Christmas music. And thankfully, this is not cheesy Christmas music in the same way that a lot of those awful, popular Christmas songs are. So my question for that is, was there a conscious effort to create Christmas music that didn't just sound like cheesy Christmas music, that it was more in line with what you'd done previously, or did you want to do something cheesy?
Well, really, the center point of it was Doesn't Feel Like Christmas, which when I was writing it, I was trying to make a Christmas song that felt like me, felt like something I would sing about that wasn't cliche. So the idea of like all of the negatives of Christmas is just something I think that I personally can relate to, with like, the older you get, the magic definitely fades. So that was the center point. And then the cheesiest one I tried to do was Here Comes Christmas. Everything other than that was almost deliberately not particularly about the word Christmas.
Hmm.
In the Snow was about the Love Actually scene. Hole in My Heart is about, like, the first, if you've broken up with someone, that first Christmas, I mean, what we were talking about before, like that first Christmas where someone's not there, and you kind of almost compensate what you would normally do with them in that period, and it's trying to find that kind of thing. So that song was actually more about the message than it being about Christmassy, because that was kind of how I felt a couple of years ago. So yeah, basically, in a long waffly way, it was never intentionally meant to sound cliche Christmassy. Just putting some sleigh bells on some of them made them sound slightly more Christmassy, but all the other ones were meant to kind of just stuff I liked, basically.
No, that's good, because I think I like the Christmas music that I like is music that it has like the Christmas themes in it, but it very much is in the style of the artist that is making it. It's not going out of the way to overtly make something that is cheesy Christmas, sleigh bells, all that type of stuff, which I very much like. But your answer there does bring me on to another question I had, was that were there any songs that you wrote for the EP where the original idea or the concept came from a different song or an experience not related to Christmas, but you transformed it and made it into something Christmassy themed?
Yes and no. So Here Comes Christmas, and I had this epiphany about 2 weeks ago.
We love epiphanies.
The music was actually nicked off a song I'd written, and I only just realized it because like it's got like a big synth in it, and I went through like a period where I was experimenting with like acoustic and big synth things, and there's a song that kind of does the same like swell on the synth, and then the thing comes in. So that one was kind of inspired by a bunch of experiments and nicked from a lot of bit of music of those. None of the words, all of the words were fresh. So they were all brand new, because once I knew that was what I was going to do, once I'd got the three written, then the themes of the other ones just aligned with them. So there wasn't really that kind of thing. But In the Snow was very old, so technically that was taking the piano off what was a very bare recording and just building everything up around it.
And did you find it difficult to write a series of songs around the same theme, or did it kind of come very easily once you kind of got in the flow of things?
Until I decided that I was going to do it, it was very easy. But then once I decided, okay, I'm going to put it out because you've got them, then it was like, oh, does it feel forced? Blah, blah, blah. So then I had to really think about it. But if I'm honest, I've really enjoyed it because it's felt a bit like a busman's holiday. I've just kind of been like, okay, I'm just doing this thing. Kind of puts me off having to write other stuff for me, if that makes sense. Because I felt slightly removed from it. And then what happened just by luck was I did that, and then I kind of got into a flow. So then I ended up writing other stuff for me anyway. But it was kind of me avoiding doing any more songs by doing these songs. And then that helped actually further down the line, which is good.
Yeah, I think it's a very important thing that it doesn't feel forced, because I know when I've tried to write music about a particular topic, like I'll set myself the topic, it can be very difficult when your mind is not in that place to force yourself to do it, that often I find it just ends up being rubbish.
Yeah, well, that was the thing with that Christmas song. So I had tried it in 2020, and because I didn't feel that way, that one just got scrapped. That one was no good. So there was a lot of kind of making sure it was about something that I felt passionate about, basically.
All right. I want to talk to you about some of the arrangements, because one of the things I noticed whilst listening to the EP was that there was the addition of a lot more orchestral-based elements like horns, strings, trumpets, violins, stuff like that. Was adding those a conscious decision to help create depth and to thicken up the music, or were they happy accidents that just ended up sounding really good?
No, they weren't. They were all of the strings on them, that was conscious. That was particularly on a song called "Hole in My Heart." That was I wanted it to sound like a Disney sound soundtrack. So that was where that came from. And then, like I said, "In the Snow" was really all uh instinct, in the sense of what the recording before existed with the guys in the half eight singing on it as well, and uh a bare piano, a couple of synths, and then a couple of bells at the end. And I just felt it never went anywhere, that recording. There was no light and shade. So the whole strings and stuff was to give it that, like you say, the bigger, more depth, because otherwise the piano is so busy that dropping things in and out, it was really difficult to decide what to keep and what to leave. So by having this great big wall of sound when I needed it to be bigger, that was kind of cheating that thing a little bit. Um, but I wouldn't have allowed myself to do that had I not done the Disney Hole in My Heart one. So for that one, it was conscious, but the other stuff was really more to fit what I had on my little challenge sheet, which was a Disney song.
Are you one of those artists who struggles? I know I personally struggle with this when I'm writing, but you have to almost get to a point where you're writing something, you're recording it in GarageBand or Pro Tools or whatever, and you get to the point where you realize, okay, if I keep just adding stuff, it's going to be too much.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. And there's a lot of chopping. There is a
Mm.
lot of cutting. Like, oh, let me try. Here Comes Christmas. That had a lot of different versions and a lot of things that were like, oh, I can put this in and take it out. And what I've realized I've got better at, I hope other people think that, is what I used to do, even in my own recordings that have been released, was cover my voice. Now that might be like triple tracking it or putting lots of harmonies on things that are sent like directly around the vocal to kind of squash it. And what I did with this was kind of make it, if it just needs one vocal, it just has one vocal. That's it. So I forgot where I was going with that, but that's something that I think I've got better at with doing. So it's like reduced one chunk of the entire mix by just having one vocal. And then that's the same with like the guitars. They're not all, there's not like 20 guitars on there. Whereas on some other records I've put out, there's like layers and layers and layers. So I think on this EP in particular, uh, I've learned a lot about producing as well as like the writing side.
Mm. Yeah, producing in itself is an entirely different challenge that I think a lot of people greatly misunderestimate how difficult producing can be when they're listening to a song. Because when they see an artist recording, they think, okay, they just record it straight into the computer, right? Done and dusted,
And that's it,
shake
yeah.
your hands, move on. But the process into which that you have to spend time mixing and doing effects and EQing and mastering, I think would blow people away. I think a lot of people don't realize that in a lot of cases, that is what can take a record so long to make, is
Yes.
the
Yeah.
amount of time just spent on the production. Like the recording itself, just getting the elements in there can be really, really quick, like maybe a month, all told up. But then you can spend months and months and months working on the production itself once you've done the recording of the raw tracks.
I mean, I don't know if you feel the same, but when you do, like you're a very good producer. From the stuff you sent me
Hmm.
was really well produced. But uh, it tests the song. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
If you're getting bored of this work, then you don't like the song enough. So therefore, there's kind of not very much point in putting all that effort into something that you're going to be like, at the end of it. Like obviously with a song, I would always say if you start, try and finish it.
Mm.
But when it goes into like deciding what reverbs you're going to use and how you're going to, all of that kind of stuff, if it's just like, this is just a pain, then that's kind of where I would have a decision with myself, go, okay, this is not the best I can do. Let's table it and try something else.
Yeah, I can definitely agree to that point, in that I can often find myself, and I've done this many times with a lot of the songs that I've written and then put into a digital audio workstation, is that I'll just spend time chasing the song. But one of the things that I'll find I do is if there's a song idea like I really like the basic concept of the song idea that I really like, I'll go away and I'll mentally rework it, because there's a song that for my band that I think it's called Lost, and I think I've probably redone the music for that 4 or 5 times, because the basic concept of that song I really like, but it's about finding exactly what works for it, and it can be a long process.
Oh yeah, because also that's like the joy of that side of making music, is the endless experimentation. Do you know what I mean? Like, so something that you go, oh, it's not quite that. It's not like it's, oh, and if it's not that, it's that. It's not quite that. It could be anything of a million things that is right. And that's kind of the joy as well, because when you find it, then it's like even better, even better.
All right. Another thing I noticed in the EP that you did was there's a lot of different diversity in sound. So you mentioned the song Boxing Day Blues, which has got a very rock and roll, country rock vibe to it. And then you have the song like In the Snow, which is a bit more indie sounding. Did the songs naturally end up progressing that way, or did you try to do something different for each of the individual songs sonically?
No, it's it was just instinct. I don't know if I'm pretty sure we did last time I was on. Like, it's not, genre is no longer something that I'm really particularly bothered about. Because you can think you're something and someone can just say, oh no, you're not.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like the first, what felt right was what felt right. So there was obviously a bit of over umbrella producing of like, well, they can't not feel like they fit, but in the same way, they're all diverse because they are just, it's just what I like. And I don't think I would have enjoyed doing five songs of one or the other. So it also as well with a Christmas record, there's only so many times you can hear It's Christmas and Sleigh Bells in the same way. So like there was a little bit of that, of being like, well, you can't have all of them the same, but also the way they came out was the way that I felt that they should, which was why they were kind of paired together, because I didn't think there was anything standing on any song's toes, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned that point specifically about not conforming to a genre, because I think a lot of artists are definitely starting to go in that way. But I think one of the things that I've seen as a result is that I think for some artists it can really work, but for others it can't. For example, I think about the 1975's record Notes on a Conditional Form. That had 22 songs, and a lot of those songs were very different from one another. And it really killed that record's flow and cohesiveness, because there wasn't an underlying feeling between all the songs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I definitely agree with the point of like genre is definitely something that, I mean, this show, I spend every week, like I sit here wondering whether or not a song qualifies as alternative or not, for that very reason you pointed out. Like someone's going to come along and say, well, that's not alternative, but someone else will consider it alternative. And I think that's the biggest difficulty now with making music, is especially if you're an artist some of those older artists who came up on a specific genre and now they try to do something else and their fans are like, oh, what's this?
Oh yeah, yeah. And
So,
that's an interesting point you raised with the Notes album,
mm,
because for me at least, I felt like I was the only person that listened to it that I knew. Whereas the album before, there was a lot of hype and a lot of
mm,
or just because they had the chance to do the promo for that. Whereas because that was in the middle of COVID, there wasn't all of the like. And then when they did the videos that were all very like,
mm,
I liked them if they were all singles. 20 songs you can't release. There's not enough time to release that many. So it's a really interesting record. And do you not think it's interesting to hear them speak about that record now with the gift of hindsight and saying like, well, we had this sprawling thing, and what they've done with being funny is a lot more measured and a
mm,
lot more uh through line, because I watched an interview with him where he was like all the guitar parts are the same, all of the vocals are all the same, it's all the band doing the things like, and I thought when you listen to it it's actually really clever that they did that,
mm.
but it's a massive contrast from where they last left off, and I would argue that I actually think that this album is probably their best.
For
I
sure.
think
I
for
think
cohesiveness.
I think definitely in hindsight, I think there's always been a level, especially since their I Like It When You Sleep record, when they did I Like It When You Sleep, and then Notes, and then also Brief Inquiry. I think those three records in particular, there is a lot of different styles on those records, but with I Like It When You Sleep and A Brief Inquiry, it felt a bit more cohesive, and maybe it was because they were both 16-song records rather than 22-song records, but I definitely agree with you that their new record, Being Funny, is probably their best just in terms of the cohesiveness. And I also just find that I've been listening to that record a lot in particular recently, and it's just glorious song after glorious song. You know, I've
It
always
is.
I've always said this about the 1975, and that when they're firing on all cylinders, they are untouchable when it comes to writing
Oh
very
yeah.
good songs. But I definitely feel that with Notes, there was a bit of faltering just in terms of they went a bit nuts, and they have every right to do so, but it definitely hit them a little bit. All
And
right.
I think that was also important for them as well. Sorry, just to go. I think
Mm,
that was another thing, a learning thing. I think that they got to this kind of height of, because I would argue that they're the biggest for what they do. They are the biggest band that's kind of ever really been, because they're an indie band that keeps getting bigger, that wants to stay small.
mm,
Whereas usually just the bigger you get, you want to get bigger. So they've kept this kind of, we're just small, we're just doing like our little electronic bedroomy stuff alongside our bigger stuff. And then they've got to this album where it's like, well, this is us being absolutely wonderful from song to song. And I think that that's standing on the shoulder of the Notes album. That's how they managed to do that.
I absolutely agree. All right. So before Ollie came on the show this evening, I put out on social media, and Ollie shared it for his fans to send in some questions to ask the man himself. And I've collected a few of these questions for him to ask. So first off, what is your favorite song off your EP, Christmassy?
Oh, it changes quite a lot.
Ain't that
But
annoying?
but I think it's Hole in My Heart. I think that that one's like really special to me. Anyway,
I
that's
definitely
my favorite.
felt, listening to that one, it definitely felt the rawest.
Yes. Well, again, going into the recording process, that was the first one I've done with no click. It was just
Oh,
play the
really?
piano, sing to what you've got, and then kind of work up from that. So it was the rawest, and it was really nice in the sense that all of those stuff that I was singing about was directly stuff that happened or I had felt, whereas some of them were like bits of other stuff. So yeah, that one I think.
Okay. Which song was the most fun to record? And I feel like the answer might be the same one we just had.
That it wasn't actually.
Oh, really?
The most fun to record was Boxing Day Blues, because it was not intended to be anything. So it was just like, okay, do. Just play the guitars, just play the things, and then just scream something over the top of it. And then, so the whole thing was done in like a morning, from the first deciding to do it to having everything recorded, and then everything was refined after. But that was just a really enjoyable morning.
I did. That one was probably the most surprising for me, because it was like, wow, you've gone freaking 4 on the floor, just full on, sort of like that 50s, 60s rock and roll, country rock type thing. And I thought it was brilliant. I really like that one. All right. Did you get any writer's block whilst writing Christmassy?
I actually had the opposite through doing it. So by doing it, it freed up my writer's block, so to speak. Just because, like I said, the January was just a lot of songs written. And then the year before were a lot of songs written. And then I just felt like, oh, I've not written anything for a bit. Excuse me. I need to start writing. Excuse me. It's early in the morning here.
Yeah. No, for context, we're recording this at 9:30 p.m. or approaching 9:30 p.m. my time, which means that it is 8:30 p.m. a.m. Sorry, in Ollie land, as I shall now dub it. All right, what is your favorite lyric from the new EP, if you have one?
I think it's which we've spoke about Christmas at the start of the call on and just in conversation, but I think you would have a very different experience of Christmas over here, because I actually have a friend from South Africa who's over here, and they were saying like it's so much more cozy and Christmas lights and all that stuff here. It's colder, but you get that, which you don't necessarily get in a hotter country. So my favorite lyric, I think, is you overeat, then spend the week watching awful TV shows. Oh no, there's the whole verse. The second verse of Doesn't Feel Like Christmas, I felt was really good, which is, if I can remember it, consumerist PR machines start to hypnotize after Halloween. The gifts that no one wants or needs depreciate while you watch the Queen. You overeat, then spend the week watching awful TV shows. Christmas doesn't feel like Christmas to me anymore. And I just thought that was my experience of Christmas in 4 lines. I think it was just really. I'm really proud of that.
I can definitely agree with you on that assessment of Christmas. My general feeling of most holidays is that they are just, an opportunity for PR machines to sell you stuff that you absolutely don't need. But having actually been to the UK during Christmas back in 2017, I can tell you exactly what my experience was like from an outsider's perspective.
I didn't know you had. I didn't know it was in Christmas. Sorry.
So for listeners, I went to the UK in December in 2017 over the Christmas period. I was there from, I think, the beginning of December to, I think I got back on New Year's Day or something like that. I spent New Year's, I believe, in a Chinese airport terminal in transit. Yeah. Well, of course, in China, it's not New Year's when we celebrate New Year's. They got it in March. But so my experience, and part of the reason, and Ollie and I were having a conversation off call about Christmas, one of the reasons that I'm not as much of a fan of Christmas anymore, particularly cheesy Christmas music, is after being in the UK for Christmas and the fact that you guys play it like it's a religion, especially Last Christmas by George Michael. I cannot listen to that song anymore. I have a burning hatred for that song because I heard it every 3 minutes whilst in the UK. But you're absolutely right in the sense that my general experiences was that your Christmases are a lot cozier and obviously colder, and that you guys, I would argue that you guys definitely, the Brits definitely get into the spirit of it more compared to New Zealanders. I think New Zealanders, obviously for us it's the middle of summer, we see it as an opportunity to go away on holiday rather than to, spend it cozy with the family all tucked up, in the house. And it was very, I didn't expect to have such a culture shock actually going to the UK in the way that I did, because you would think that, obviously, a lot of people from the UK came to New Zealand. That's how New Zealand as a colony was formed. But the way that the cultures have diverged in such a massive way, it really. But UK Christmas is definitely something that is a very unique experience, and I highly recommend anybody who wants to go and try a UK Christmas. I do recommend it because it is very cozy, very friendly as well. Because I was by myself with my aunt, I went to a friend of theirs for Christmas Day dinner, and they were very welcoming. They even got me gifts. Like, these are people I had never met before, and they got me presents. So highly recommend a UK Christmas if you ever feel like it, because it is a very warm, cozy, welcoming, and they very much get into the spirit of it. So there you go.
Very true.
Yeah. Okay. Last listener question is, what is your favorite song to perform live and why?
Well, I've had the chance to perform some of them more than once.
Yes, you have.
And I think, for me, I think that but no, I think Here Comes Christmas is my favorite. And the reason why is because when I wrote it, it was written, like I said, to be as cheesy as possible Christmas song, or rather as cliche as possible. And so there were like little melody things and little time changes that when I was writing them, I thought, oh, this is kind of like, it works for the song, but are people going to be able to sing along to it and what have you? And it worked. So it's quite rewarding to play that one. And I was lucky because I turned on like my local town's Christmas lights. So I performed that song in front of like 9,000 people. And that was really that was just a lovely moment. So maybe it's the associated memory I have with the song, but I think that's my favorite to perform at the minute.
Yeah, no, I saw that. Ollie performed at, was it the Mansfield Christmas lights? Have I got that right?
It was Mansfield.
Yes. And yes, I saw the selfie you took on stage, and I thought, you're on your way, mate. You're on your way.
Oh, thanks. I mean, it was good. And to be fair, a lot of people were there for the actual band that were the main headline, which is E17. But
which I've never heard of.
I played. Well, that's a good point, actually. That over here is like one of the Christmas songs. So obviously Last Christmas, I'm sure, is like global, but particularly in England, they are like one of the big Christmas songs. But it did strike me as it's not one of the massive ones over here. So I guess around the world, they're probably not that big. If you've never even heard of them.
Well, I think this in general, because I've been listening recently to a lot of the pop acts, like the boy bands and the girl bands from like the late 90s, early 2000s from the UK. And I think this still reigns true. I think the UK market is big enough musically for artists to have a perfectly legitimate and thriving career in music without being known anywhere else in the world.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that there are a lot of bands from the UK that I only know of because either from doing this show and finding them and playing the music, or because I just happened to stumble across them. And it's one of those things. I think when anyone discovers music in general, it's one of those things that you kind of go, huh, these guys are really successful and I've never heard of them.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the same. I always feel like don't you feel like you're always catching up? Like you never can say, oh yeah, this and this and this and this was this movement and this movement. Whereas, because obviously there's such like a before you were born, there's all this wonderful music. But now, because of Spotify, there's all that wonderful music, all the wonderful music that while you've been alive, then all of the music that's out right now by big people, but because of like Spotify, all the independent artists that make amazing music, it's like I mean, obviously you can never hear everyone, but even in the stuff that you like, you don't even scratch the surface, or that's how I feel anyway.
Yeah, and again, this speaks to another point where, you know, I've when I've been researching, you know, about the music industry in general, not only does it represent a massive problem, but it also represents a massive good thing, is the rise of streaming. There are obviously a number of problems with it, but one of the problems that it has come with it is just massive oversaturation. There is so much new music, and saturation in some ways is a good thing because it means that there's something for everybody. But to your point, it means that if you're someone like me who obviously makes a weekly radio show focusing on alternative music and you've only got an hour or two to fit in as many songs as possible, stuff gets left on the floor, you know, and I've really tried to expand, and I've expanded my music knowledge in terms of artists massively through doing the show over the past couple of years. But absolutely, to your point, it does definitely feel like there is so much, you're always catching up. I think the good thing for me in that regard is I don't listen to a lot of mainstream pop music. I just forget that exists because I'm not a fan of it, and I think it's got its audience, it's not me. So, you know, that probably cuts out like 25% of the garbage, but that still leaves 75% of all this stuff, and I probably know 5% at most, you know.
But that's still an amazing amount to know. Like even you've sent me bands as well. Like, and I really liked the music that you sent. But that is the one thing with streaming is you can recommend bands that I just wouldn't have. They were all New Zealand bands you sent. I just wouldn't have heard them. There is no connection. It's not like they were popping up all the time on my Instagram because why would they? Do you know what I mean? So that's one thing about having something as easy as streaming where everything's in one place. You can find all these people a lot easier, but because there's so much, actually finding it for yourself is very difficult. Because obviously they predict stuff for you, but they never predict a small artist from, you know, I don't know, from Auckland for me. There've been very few, like it's all smaller people on bigger labels, basically.
And when it comes to New Zealand music, I've definitely tried to feature as much of it in the show as possible, and even to the point where I've had some of my wonderful stations, of which you're currently listening to on, who have asked for like some of the music separately so they can add it to their normal rotation, which is awesome because I'm happy to toot that horn and happy to advocate for it. But one of the biggest problems we have, and this is specifically a New Zealand problem, is that we are such a small country population-wise and such a diverse country population-wise that a lot of new artists here, they either manage to break through the noise like a Lord, where they manage to jump onto the mainstream through YouTube or some medium like that. And no disrespect to Lord, when she came out, she was mainstream pop, you know, so it fit the mold that people were looking for. There are a lot of New Zealand bands I know of that are not of that ilk, that have gone by the wayside because they just haven't been able to find the audience, because either they haven't been able to find the audience here because, again, we're so little but so diverse that the fan base they can generate is not big enough, or that, again, it goes back to the oversaturation problem, that there's just so much other music out there that it's so hard to compete, that being able to stand up in front of the crowd now is so much more difficult, that it makes it, I think, both an exciting challenge but also very daunting.
Oh yeah, 100%. But then, you know what we've spoken about before, that then kind of brings forward the idea of, well, you kind of, well, particularly with like TikTok and content creation, make stuff that's in your lane and keep making it, and you'll find like your audience. However, then this idea that you are genreless and that music is thingy is kind of already outdated then, because that means you've got to keep hitting and there's a girl over here called Bronny. You might like her. You might like her. So check her out. But she is very much pop punk, and she has always been pop punk right on the since the day that she started. And she's really reaping that reward now, like really seeing build, and obviously like pop punk's having a bit of a revival anyway, but she really seeing like the benefit of that kind of, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do. On the other side, there was a band that I supported in the half eight called the Hara, and I've watched them kind of develop their sound from this really mainstream thing, like really mainstream, and they had a really big following because of that. And then it's got darker and darker and darker, and now it's almost like it's almost metally. It's like it's very what's the word, diluted and a bit beigey metal, just in my opinion. But it's still metally, and the numbers are maybe not as like fanatical little girls, but they're like doing bigger festivals. They did Reading and Leeds, which are big festivals over here. And stuff. So it's really interesting that kind of, you almost have to decide your lane again, just to get a fan base, which is interesting, I think.
Yeah, it really, I think it really speaks to an issue where, as you said, like the concept of genre is very much now a very loose concept where people can decide whether or not they stick to it or not. But you're right. If you want to, you need to do something, and you need to do it well in order to stand out from everybody else. And a lot of the bands that have had big successes, you're right, are people who, at least in the beginning, right, when they had the following, then they could start experimenting and trying some different things. But to get the following, they had to sort of stick in a lane. They had to do what they did very well. And often they do it very well. But it is that thing of, you know, it's always the constant battle. Were people interested in you from the beginning because you performed a particular type of music, or were they into you from the beginning because they liked your songs, they liked what you had to say lyrically, they liked you as people, as entertainers? And it's very much a balancing act. And again, there's a number of issues we can talk about when it comes to the music industry and the issues that modern day artists face. And I think we've raised a couple here, which are very important ones, but it continues to blow me away that, you know, you mentioned the TikTok thing. I think the TikTok thing's totally valid, but I think we're seeing with a lot of those artists, they kind of do like one album and then they disappear because people kind of realize that that's all they had. You know, they didn't really have much more than one. But I think also it's been refreshing to see record labels take chances on those people who kind of came from nowhere. But I wish they would do that more with people who weren't just coming from TikTok that they knew already had a following, you know?
Yes.
And I miss the days of A&R guys going out to bars and pubs and clubs on like Friday, Saturday nights, looking at independent bands playing to 6 people and them going, I see potential. Because that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, again, I mean, we can go on a long train with this, but I saw a video about this kind of like how the music industry or what during COVID and post is just playing catch up in the sense that before what your advance and what a label's job was to find you an audience, grow the audience, pay for the recordings, and kind of launch your career in all the stuff that wasn't the music. Whereas now you're actually signed as an artist come content creator. And what it means is if you've already got the numbers, then you have your audience. So they don't have to put the money behind that side. They just have to put the money behind the music, which as well, most artists nowadays are able to use Logic and able to use some form of recording device. So really, you're doing the demos yourself, and then a producer maybe is coming in and just putting everything together a little bit.
To your point about the record labels and them only really funding, all they really do now is, as you say, either fund the producer or fund the distribution, and that's about it.
And their infrastructure is invaluable. That is true. You can't their ability to have billboards put up wherever because like I think they rent some of them like on the underground in London. I think that they own certain ones, which means whoever's their artist of the month, done. And that kind of stuff is invaluable because that's lots of people seeing your brand every day. But
do you think we could get an alternative hour poster on one of those billboards in the underground?
yes, you could. Well, if you've got stickers, you can stick them everywhere. So if you send me some stickers.
Maybe I'll have to free advertising in the London Underground. Could you imagine?
Very true.
All right. So there's a little spiel for you, everybody, on the problems in the music industry. Don't you love unscripted interviews? None of that part was scripted. So that's the thing. It's like I like doing these very conversational interviews because it means you get good stuff like this. So there we go.
But I also know that like you're a proper music nerd and you're properly passionate about it. So
yes, I'm sitting here right now with glasses and buck teeth.
But I know I love talking to you about it because you're so clued up. And yeah, I feel we've only ever spoken through the internet, and we've only ever kind of conversed because of like similar music and other stuff. So it's always lovely speaking to you about it because I know that there's a lot of stuff that we could discuss.
For context, the first time I met Ollie was back, maybe 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years ago now. I was doing music reviews on a YouTube channel, and Ollie's band at the time, the Half Eight, reached out because they liked what I did with my Busted review, specifically around the Night Driver release, and so the rest is all history. So I've never been able to get rid of him.
Nope.
So, but
we're just coming back.
I'm quite happy to keep having coming back, and Charlie as well from the Half Eight. I still am in contact with, and he is also a good friend of the show. So, and we've played both Ollie and Charlie's music since the end of the Half Eight. But before I let you go, do you want to give us, if you're willing to give any information away about what's coming up for you in 2023?
Yes. So in 2023, at this point, me speaking today, I worked out there are 6 things that I'm involved in coming out next year.
Exclusive.
That's today. I don't know if that's gonna be the case, but for me, I want to put out another album. I want to put out 2 albums in an ideal world because I've just got a lot of songs. But obviously, I don't know how practical that's going to be. But 2 albums, and then I have a song called Easy Life, which people have who follow me for a while have wanted to hear that for a long time. So that's definitely going to be out next year. And lots more music, lots more videos, because I really enjoyed doing that this time, I must say. I really enjoyed doing proper music videos. And also lots more shows, lots more places you can go see me. And I want to kind of go out and play my music to different places. I feel maybe what's the word, like, I feel confident, but obviously maybe that's slightly because it was a show of my own and I was playing to people that came to see me. But I feel far more confident having now done a show to go out and do it in other places. So yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is our interview / discussion with Mr. Ollie Hayes. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Ollie,
thank you so much for having me.
You can check out his EP Christmassy on all good streaming services right now. Go stream the hell out of it. Get those numbers up, please, because Ollie deserves it, and those 6 microcents that Spotify pays out for every stream that it does. So yes, thank you, Ollie.